Hello, hello everyone. This is Coach Clem, entrepreneur and mindset coach. And today I am super pleased to have Hazel Rockingham with us. So this is going to be a little interview. As you know, I'm really passionate about anything that can help us live better lives and have more success in our businesses and professional lives. And so Hazel today is a specialist in NLP. So I'm really, really excited to hear more about NLP from Hazel today. What would you like to start with, Hazel? What would you like to share about you? How would you like to introduce yourself?
So Hazel Rockingham, and I'm an NLP coach and therapist. And NLP is neuro linguistic programming.
Mhm,
And I started my journey with NLP back in 2015 through working with a business coach at the time.
mhm,
Part of my professional development was I was allocated my own coach, and that was where I started my journey. So through that, I found a coach who specialised in NLP, and at the
mhm,
time I'd never heard about NLP. Having a coach was something I associated with, the USA. It was very kind of unheard of, really, for me then, and my experience of it. So that's when I experienced about NLP, self-awareness, that journey, and what it did for
mhm,
me. And it became transformational in me having a baseline to
mhm,
understand myself, to then understand others better. And I was massively intrigued, wanted to learn more and more. So in 2020, when I was made redundant through, unfortunately, through the pandemic,
mhm,
my role changed. I then was made redundant, became self-employed because I didn't know what being employed looked like. I didn't know what I wanted to apply for. The world had changed, I changed, and then thought actually now was the time for me to retrain and use my redundancy money I was very fortunate to have and retrain. That's when I did my diploma in NLP, my practitioner qualification, and then on to do my mastery. So it's been quite a journey for the past 8 years, but it's something that once I'd learned about myself, I was really keen to help others
mhm.
understand themselves to then make that relevant change in their life and whatever that was, different
Yeah.
region.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, thanks for sharing your story. And I love the fact that in the first step for you with NLP was to benefit from NLP from a coach,
Yeah,
which is now what you do so that you can,
yes.
share the NLP as well in your own terms. So we hear a lot about NLP at the moment, if you're on LinkedIn or anywhere online. But I think most people don't know what NLP was, which was probably your case before you started
Yeah.
working with that coach initially. So could you tell us more about NLP and how to understand it, like the basics of it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And even when I was when I was being coached,
Mhm,
I don't even think it was fully explained to me. And I don't always think it's essential, but I think now we are talking about NLP, and
mhm,
it is being used across so many different disciplines, and that is the beauty of it. It is it's so transferable to a lot of things that people don't realize. More people I've spoken to, in the NHS, in psychology, in different, the sales world, people say to me, "Oh, actually, we did that in a training course," and I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, well, you will have done because it is so transferable." So, a bit of background about NLP: it was developed in the 1970s.
mhm,
And it was a result of some research on humanistic communication, which is where the research started, by a professor of linguistics called John Grinder and a psychologist called Richard Bandler. And what they did is they decided to study, rather than coming up with a new theory and a new model, they studied the work of three outstanding therapists: Fritz Perls, Virginia Satir, who was a family therapist, and Milton Erickson, who was the world hypnotherapist at the time. So that they looked at essentially what these three people did, and although they were completely different in their approach and their disciplines, they did have one defining factor that was very similar throughout. And so NLP essentially is models, it's modeling, it's patterns of excellence. So we break down human performance into complex small chunks, and we look at how we can replicate that. So when you look at something that you do as an individual very, very well, you can adapt that model to something that maybe you don't do so very well, and look at the similarities and look at how it sounds complicated, but it isn't. But also part of NLP is learning underlying patterns and underlying thinking patterns to help you understand the way you communicate.
Mhm.
And that was what was extremely effective for me in the very beginning of my journey back in 2015. It was right, okay, understand what my levels of programming is, to understand why I'm reacting the way I am to certain things, what are my triggers. And the more I understood that, the more it made sense, and the more I could change the way I thought about things. So the way we think and we feel and we behave is intrinsically connected. And we use something called the Mercedes model to explain this. And what we don't realise is we can change the way we think. We think our thoughts just pop into our head and we can't do anything about them. But the mind is like Google. It will actively search for what you put in it. So we can choose ultimately what we put in it. So why not choose positive things, reframe the negative things? And it does change our behaviour. It changes how we feel about something, which then changes how we feel and behave, essentially. And it's been life changing for me. And you know, to just to have that level of understanding alone about why I react to things, and ultimately as an individual, the way we take the world in through our five senses, and we create an internal map. So even though we may be subject to the same experiences in life, how we make sense of that is very different as an individual, and it can change our behavior. It can ultimately program us to have a set of beliefs which we run patterns throughout our life with these beliefs, and there can come a point where they can become very unhelpful, and that tends to be the reason, or the instance where someone will reach out to me and say, I'm struggling with this, can you help me? And essentially, yeah, that's the first somebody reaching out asking if I can help them, and it's we'll have a conversation. What is it you want to change? Because essentially people have to want to change because the work's hard, as you know. Being a coach, change work is difficult, even when you want to change.
Yeah.
Then about doing the work and putting it in the hard work yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is super, super important. So so what are the usual sort of situations or things that people want to change when they come to you and you can help with? Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, I think again, everyone comes with a pain point that they need solving, and that can be a multitude of things. But what it always boils down to is probably lack of self-understanding and lack of self-belief. So my last two clients came to me because their roles had changed throughout lockdown. They then now had to become more active, more proactive in bringing in business for their own businesses. So that meant going out to networking events and potentially speaking as a keynote to educate people on what their business did and what the type of business they were looking for. And they thought it was lack of confidence. That, you know, public speaking isn't for everybody, but it is essential for people sometimes to educate people about their business, to bring in business. And not a lot of people like doing it. You know, anxiety comes in, that fear, and it's about recognizing what that is. So people have come to me, the last two clients have come to me with a desire to need to be better at public speaking. They haven't wanted necessarily to do it and become better at it. They've just wanted to, they know they've got to do it, so they want to become more comfortable doing it. And each client that I've seen recently, it's never about the confidence, because they know their product, they know their service, they know their business, they've got it, they've got the knowledge. The confidence is your self-belief. It's always lack of self-belief that people come to me with. They don't know it, they don't talk about self-belief, but it tends to be there's a lack of self-belief in their life, because of some past experience. It's generally before the age of 7. Something will have happened in their life as a child at the age generally before the age of 7 or between 7 and 13. They've retained that, they've put an attachment to that meaning, that feeling. So as soon as they get that feeling again, it creates a behavior, and that behavior is, I don't want to do it, I don't want to stand up and speak to people, and people are looking at me, people are judging me.
Yeah.
You know, and it's about clearing all of that and practice. As we know, practice makes perfect. So the more you want to practice become good at something, model excellence, you practice, you think about something that you do really well, put up, you know, some people are very process, let's put a process to it, you know, let's just do it. And it's, and all of a sudden, you know, after 3 or 4 sessions, clients have gone, well, actually, I'm not, you know, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. And it's like, no, it never is. But if you attach something, if you believe something, you will. You've just got to clear that, practice it. You've got the confidence, you've got the knowledge, go out and do it. And once you've done it, I think it's overcoming that first initial hurdle and have it. And that's when the confidence comes in to go, actually, I am good at this. There's no need to be fearful. You know, what's the worst that's going to happen? Nothing's going to happen. You know, people have this thing about creating a barrier, and it's not. People in front of you that you're speaking to want you to succeed. They want you to tell them they're there because they're interested in listening to you speak. They want to hear what you've got to say. They're rooting for you. You know, have the confidence to believe that about yourself, and you won't fall wrong. You know, and yeah, and actually, one of my clients just won an award, so he was a member of a membership committee, a membership networking, and he's got an award for speaking. And now 3 months earlier, he'd come to me and said, I can't speak, I'm terrified. And actually, he's done really, really well. So you can overcome stuff. It's just about reframing that thinking, and doing it. And that's just one example of you know, of change work. It's about wanting change, and what that looks like is different for everybody. But the NLP framework and modeling techniques can be used across broader disciplines to give you that result.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for giving a concrete example. I think it helps when for the audience listening to us, what it could actually do. And and could you also tell us about what happens during a session? Is it similar to hypnosis? So you mentioned hypnosis as being one of the models that have been studied to create NLP. Do you have like to close your eyes, or is it more like you back and forth and speaking with a coach? Just for people to like have an idea of what happens in the session.
I think yes and no. There is you know, how I work with the client is I'll have my first 90-minute session with them where I will essentially just get to know them, get to understand what their thinking is, what they feel like they need change with, any issues, and we'll have a full discussion, and that client can tell me as little or as much as they want. It's entirely up to them what they tell. But the more they tell me, the more they're open, the more they show their vulnerabilities, the more I can help them, because the more I can get to the root cause of what is causing this lack of self-belief, or this lack of confidence, or this issue that they want to overcome. Again, I don't have a one size fits all with every client. It's I don't know what I'm going to be faced with when a client sits in front of me. I don't know what issues. So there is a range of techniques. There is some trance work which is similar to, it's not hypnosis, but it's a deep trance, deep relaxation. That is one of the many things that we can do. But I tend to do that at the end of a session to leave a client feeling nice and relaxed and at peace with themselves as they leave a session, because sometimes it can be quite overwhelming and emotional to talk about a lot of stuff. You just don't know what's going to come out. A client doesn't always, know what's going to come out in a 90-minute session. But yeah, I kind of pretty much take on whatever. I adapt my sessions based on what I've got in front of me. So it could be anything from, there's timeline work, there's talking therapy. I'm also an integral eye movement therapy practitioner as well, which is kind of similar to EMDR, if people have heard of that. But it uses eye movement and talking at the same time to get rid of any particular traumas or that like lack of self-belief that could be there, which is really effective with clients. But essentially it is just listening and then uncovering what the real issue is, because the real issue never is what the client comes to you with, because they don't understand it at the time. And it's about finding, and there's a range of techniques we do, but it essentially is whatever that client needs. But it's talking therapy, it's talking coaching, and then it's coming up with a range of techniques that will then help that client depending on what it is, what the struggle is, what the issue is, and helping them to overcome that.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing all these wonderful information. It reminds me of actually what happened this morning with a client. So we went back to actually something quite deep and quite ancient for him, particularly, like you were saying, something before the age of 7. And I love how you describe, this deprogramming that I really resonate with, and all these neuroscience and all these tools are now providing us with amazing ways to be efficient, to be quite quick to achieving results, like in a very operational, very effective way, which is amazing. And what I love as well about what you're sharing, and it's definitely my experience as well as a coach, is that although you might be facing right now something you're struggling with, it could be fear of public speaking, it could be all sorts of things that that could be your issue right now. But by doing that work of actually going deep, not only do you address that, because like you said, there's always a core root cause that's beyond. Not only do you address that particular problem, but it also like sort of ripples as a ripple effect on all the spheres of life, of your relationship, of your enjoyment, of your self-esteem. So it's I know that it's going to be weird to say that, but your struggle is good news, because that's going to be so great to work on those things. Yeah.
It is, and it's recognizing that, and it's like your core values and your beliefs. And I had a conversation with somebody probably a few years ago about I tended to job hop quite a lot back in my early career, and I used to stay 2 or 3 years, and then I would become restless and I would move on. And I remember sitting down with my last employer, who was a business coach, and I remember us having that discussion very early on, and him saying to me, what are your core values, Hazel? What type of organisation do you want to work for? What do you want their core values to be? And I remember sitting there thinking, what on earth is he talking about? This isn't the structure of an interview. I've not been used to this, And it got me thinking, and it was, every organisation I've worked with previously just wasn't the right fit for me. Now I never realised that, and I don't think you do when you're kind of late teens, 20s. Nobody has that conversation with you about what are your core values, and what type of organisation do you want to work for? Because it's a two-way street, isn't it? When you're sat in front of an employer, you want to be asking them questions based on how you'll be treated, and there was none of that, and we are getting better at that now. When I look back now at the pattern, it does very much, it makes sense as to why things never worked out, because I never felt valued. Well, for me, in my core values are integrity, honesty, and trust. And if I'm micromanaged and I'm not trusted, where are you? If you're not at your desk, you're getting that phone call. You've had an hour and 5 minutes for your lunch, or you come in at 9:05, or there's some, and that straight away, that kind of tight rein never worked for me. To be managed that tightly, it's actually what are you paying me for? Are you paying me for the 8 hours that I come here a day for, or are you paying me for the value that I add to your business, which is more than 8 hours a day when you look at it over the period of a week? And it's realizing about you as an individual, what you value, what you want to do with life, who you want to be friends with, who you want to associate with, who you want to work for. All of this change work makes you realize a lot about yourself, and it is transformational. It will change you, and your circle may change because of that, but maybe your circle needs to change. You know, we think we have these hard and fast rules that we have to adapt to in life. But how often are those rules ours? You know, they're not. There's somebody else's, and we've adapted to it, and we think we have to. Well, actually, we don't. We get a choice, and I think the more we understand about ourselves, that change and that choice comes from that.
100%. Yeah, that's wonderful. So my last question is going to be, does it work in person as well as online? If some people are interested and they want to reach out and maybe they're not local to the Northeast?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I have worked with clients on Zoom. I've done some exec coaching with the national company, and probably, yeah. I mean, it depends on how you learn. I think a lot of change work helps you develop your communication and learning style. And if you are somebody that works very easily on Zoom or online, then yeah, it absolutely can work for you. It's about the connection. It's about establishing a connection with somebody, with me, and the other person, and them getting a feeling on if we can work together and if I can help them. And yeah, it can absolutely be done online, because essentially the work is on themselves. They've got to do the hard work, but I've got to listen, help them, coach them through that change. And yeah, and equally it can be done in person, if logistically and geographically that can work. And in a workshop scenario, I've done some great workshops with teams to help them with their communication, to help them communicate effectively. Managers that are trying to manage a team of 10 the same, even though they all retain and communicate very differently. You can't manage 10 people the same way, because you just can't, and people understand that and struggle. But it's been amazing. You know, it's been great, the feedback that people are susceptible. We are starting to talk more about mental health, well-being, and change in the workplace now. And I think it's the best thing a business or organization can do for their employees is to help them better understand themselves, and they will work more effectively. They will work as a team more effectively, and that will always help the bottom line of the business. Because if you have happy employees, that, you know, the employees are the most important asset of any business, and if you can help them understand themselves and help them work better together, more cohesively, then that's better as a business than having a toxic environment culture, as we all know.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for all these very, very valuable insights. I think it's great to learn more about NLP, about all these different tools that can help us. So I will make sure to put all your details in the comments and the link in the text below this recording, so that if you want to be in touch with Hazel, you'll have all the details to reach her. Thank you again so much, Hazel, for this conversation.
Thank you, Clem. It's been great, and thanks for listening.
All right, bye everyone.